Thank you all for attending this launch of the UK Digital Poverty Evidence Review, which I wrote for the Digital Poverty Alliance. I'm so sorry not to be there in person. Unfortunately, COVID has finally caught up with me, and I'm at home convalescing instead of conversing with you. Thank you for making it possible, though, for me to be there with you in video form, if not in person. It's encouraging to know you're all there, a room full of people committed to eradicating digital poverty. You all recognize the importance and recalcitrance of digital exclusion, and I'm sure it goes without saying, but it's always worth saying, that we all have a role to play in both keeping digital poverty on the political agenda and taking action in our own corners of the world to tackle it. I hope that this evidence review will be a useful resource in pushing the agenda on digital poverty, so that alongside stopgap reactionary interventions to alleviate the most acute need, we also need to think ahead, think long-term, and think in transformational terms about how to ensure the digital future is a fair, equitable future. I have an academic background, having conducted research on digital inequality and exclusion for more than a decade now, and I brought this perspective and experience to the evidence review. In writing the review, I consulted more than 200 sources of evidence from academia, the third sector, industry, and government on the 5 determinants of digital poverty as articulated by the Digital Poverty Alliance. These are devices and connectivity, access, capabilities, motivation, and support and participation. Each of these determinants could easily have constituted its own report. They're expansive, and each encompasses a constellation of nuanced issues. The reason for this complexity comes down to one crucial fact, that digital poverty is as much a social problem as it is a technological problem. In other words, I'm here to tell you, having written something called the Digital Poverty Evidence Review, not to be too misled by the digital here. As the review highlights time and time again, the solution to the digital divide is not only about making life essential technologies more usable, it's about making life more livable for people. And that might not have much to do with technology at all. So my goal, and the goal of the Digital Poverty Alliance in commissioning this review, was to radically update our understanding of the factors that contribute to digital poverty, taking into account what academics call the socio-technical dimensions of the digital world today, a world in which the social and the technological are inextricably entangled. There's a lot in the review that unpacks the socio-technical dynamics that contribute to digital poverty, and it will come as no surprise to you that I'd recommend giving it a good read. But what I wanted to take this opportunity to do is to draw your attention to a few important themes that cut across all of the 5 dimensions of digital poverty. In the report, I call these game-changing shifts, and these are the changes that have been brought about by the widespread digitization of nearly all parts of life. At this point, digitization is pervasive, and it is unavoidable. Everyone, regardless of how digitally connected or literate they are, has to interact with digital technologies, services, systems, and processes. Digitization will impact their lives in one way or another. Therefore, digital inclusion is no longer a luxury, something that would be nice to have. It is a must-have, a basic requirement for living a full and well-rounded life. And this reality is now the context in which we're trying to tackle digital poverty. The benchmark for inclusion and equity in this digital world has shifted, and it will continue to shift as a result of continuing digital transformation and new technologies. So the evidence review spotlights 3 key shifts that absolutely must be acknowledged and addressed in our work to end digital poverty going forward. First, in what is surely the ultimate paradox for this work, digital cannot be treated as a separate issue from other social, economic, and political issues. Today, the distinction between online and offline has become completely blurred. The challenge for us then is to keep the spotlight on digital exclusion and its contribution to disadvantage, particularly as the crisis of the pandemic fades more and more into the background, while also recognizing that digital is pervasive And disadvantage in terms of digital cannot be treated on its own, isolated from other forms of disadvantage. This means that digitization and digital technologies should not be a taken for granted part of transacting, of existing in the UK today. Digitization must remain remarkable. It must remain visible, and it must remain subject to critique. The UK is already a highly digitized country. You all know the stats. 94% of households have internet access, according to Ofcom. But relative differences in quality of access and experience of access are the new and deepening digital divides. The second important shift that has occurred in recent years is that the digitally excluded are still digital citizens. This is due to what scholars call datification, which means the process by which information about people is turned into data that can be processed in various ways by computers. Data and datification underpin most digital services. We have already entered an era of data-driven decision-making, where automated systems use information about people to find patterns, make associations, and even predict outcomes. Even people with limited or no digital access and skills are subject to datification. Having too little data about someone can put them at a disadvantage, as can having too much data about them, or processing information about them in ways that they don't feel comfortable with, or which leads to erroneous conclusions and outcomes. Ensuring people have access to devices, adequate connectivity, and the skills they need to translate these resources into positive outcomes in their lives remain vitally important today. But the evidence review draws on research that shows how datification is also implicated in perpetuating digital poverty. Datification is the next frontier of digital disadvantage. It impacts people's outcomes, their trust in the digital world, and their motivation as digital citizens. The third shift we need to contend with is that the digital world can be unfair by design. A growing body of literature explores how unconscious assumptions get built into the technologies that we rely on every day. Algorithmic bias, digital tracking and surveillance, and the commercial sale of data are already embedded in the digital ecosystem, and tackling the determinants of digital poverty will require ensuring the digitized algorithmic systems do not perpetuate, deepen, or create new disadvantages for people. The automation of many processes and services and the invisibility of algorithmic decisions can create a false impression that these decisions are objective and neutral. When frontline staff in essential services rely on these outputs, it can deepen inequalities faced by already disadvantaged groups. But digital design done well, done with safety, privacy, and equity at its core, has the potential to assist and empower many excluded users. For example, ensuring digital platforms and services are completely accessible in line with WCAG guidelines would help more disabled people benefit from digitization. Ensuring that assistive technologies are affordable in a tech ecosystem that too often privileges profit over public benefit would help even further. As I wrote in the report, because of these game-changing shifts, digital inclusion can be a double-edged sword. Being included in the digital world is necessary to live a fulfilling life today, but participation in the digital world as we know it also exposes people, particularly people with low literacy and skills, to new disadvantages and even harms. Digital poverty doesn't end when people finally get online or have access to a reasonable device. We also need to think about the quality of life people will have once they are online, so that being digitally included doesn't mean being digitally disadvantaged. So to truly end digital poverty, we need to ensure not only that people have a minimum level of access, but that digital technologies, platforms, services, and systems are safe, accessible, and privacy enhancing. Because of how widespread digitization has become by now, it's easy to look at the landscape and think, that's just the way it is. I hope that this evidence review provides a helpful basis for comprehensive cross-sector collaboration and change. It's a call to drive toward the way it could be. In summary, The evidence we need to take into account in order to tackle digital poverty goes beyond what we've traditionally relied on, statistics on digital connections and skills. And it now needs to encompass all the complexities of a data-driven world and how these are embedded in people's social contexts. The UK's digital future will be a profound disappointment, and indeed it would be shameful if the future entails establishing the UK as a global science and technology superpower that is the best place to start and grow a technology business, as the new UK digital strategy puts it, attracting world-leading science and technology talent and becoming a paragon of progress in fields such as AI, quantum computing, and the cross-border trade of data. While so many people in the UK struggle to afford broadband, lack adequate devices, do not have essential digital skills, and in short, do not meet a minimum digital living standard for getting by in the digital age. The good news is that there are already many wonderful efforts underway to change the narrative, to take account of these complexities, and to tackle digital poverty as a social and technological issue. The research underway on a minimum digital living standard, for instance, spearheaded by Good Things Foundation, the University of Liverpool, and Loughborough University, is well on the way to defining a powerful and policy-relevant definition of digital inclusion fit for the digital world of today that goes beyond merely survival to instead focus on what it takes for households to thrive. The evidence review is also a celebration of this kind of work, which has gone on for many years and is still ongoing. The work so many organizations and individuals do to address the most desperate need in our communities and to tackle the bigger picture issues too. I imagine that most of us here have the privilege of living a full digital life in 2022. We have the devices and the connections. We have access, and we don't feel inhibited by common digital barriers. We have the capabilities to use our devices and access, and we know how to develop our capabilities further if we need to. We are motivated. We know the benefits of being online, and we have the support to participate how we want to in the digital world. But these are privileges. They're not, as a package, the norm yet. I know the Digital Poverty Alliance is trying to change that. And this evidence review will hopefully be an impactful resource for setting an action-oriented agenda to end digital poverty once and for all. Thank you.